here, so let's everybody say hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Okay, they're out of the way because she didn't call me. How many times, honey? 3, 4, 5 times to make sure I record this. So, yes.
She's proud of the boy.
She's proud of me. Well, this morning I do have a message. I do have a word to share before the message. It's something that's been weighing heavily on my heart for a couple of days. And it has nothing to do with the message, so obviously it's of God, and take it as that. And it's like it's not meant to harm anybody, it's meant to help you. So just take it as meant in love. Too oftentimes we have things going on in our lives that seem insurmountable, and we just can't deal with it, and so we take a page out of the ostrich's book, and we just shove our head in the dirt and then hope it goes away. Unfortunately, that's not the way it's going to work. It's not going to go away as soon as you pull your head out of the sand. The problem's still going to be there, and you got to deal with it. And whoever says for, hey, didn't get any revelation of who it's for. So it could be for multiple people. It's like, but you need to deal with it. It's like, stop running away from it. Stop putting your head in the sand, pretending it's not going to, and it's not there. As I can deal with it. It's like this book tells you can deal with anything. That's like you got God on your side. You can deal with anything. That's like if this book isn't enough. That's like you got men and women beside you that will gladly help you, pray for you. Whatever kind of aid they can give you, they'll give you to help you get past this. Because you know what, that problem you're dealing with right now that's holding you back. That's like you got to deal with it. You got to get out of your life. That's like because it's dragging you down, and it's like, and the more it drags you down, it's going to start sucking other people down with you. And it's like, and who wants that? It's like, you don't want to be the person that brings other people down, do you? I don't. So whoever is meant for us, take it as that. It's like deal with your problem. That's like pray about it. That's like if it's too big for you, you feel it's too big for you. When you pray about it, you still feel it's a little big for you. Call your sister, call your brother, call whoever. That's like, but get the help you need and deal with it. That's like because the longer you don't deal with it, the bigger it's going to get. It's not going to go away. It's just going to continue to get bigger and bigger until you really got a mess on your hands. Mm-hmm. So with that word, hopefully whoever it was meant for, takes it and runs with it. So we're going to start off in Exodus this morning, chapter 20, verses 1 through 17. Really familiar words for should be for all of us in this room. Then God gave the people all these instructions. I am the Lord your God who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery. You must not have any God but me. Rule number 1. You must not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the sea. You must not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God who will not tolerate your affection for any other gods. I lay the sins of the parents upon their children. The entire family is affected, even children in the 3rd and 4th generations of those who reject me. But I lavish unfailing love for 1,000 generations on those who love me and obey my commands. You must not misuse the name of the Lord your God. The Lord will not let you go unpunished if you misuse his name. Number 3. Remember to observe the Sabbath by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. We're going to come back to that, so I want to read all the commandments. But the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the 7th day he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. Honor your father and mother. Then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely against your neighbor. You must not covet your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. These are the basic laws that God gave us. And what's interesting enough is the rule about the Sabbath is one of the commandments that Jesus never really mentioned by name. Like he never referenced it because God is Lord of the Sabbath. But an important distinction, when Moses first gives these rules is the term ordinary work. We need to delve into that. What is ordinary work? Well, ordinary. Some definitions of ordinary. commonplace, standard, usual, regular, normal. And the definition of work is one's occupation or labor. So basically, it's something you normally do for work, for money. Okay? Well, mowing lawns. Mowing lawns work. It's like, well, if you're getting paid for it, yes, it's work. But it's something you enjoy, and you're not, you're just mowing your own yard, and that's, something that's your quiet time, your like peaceful time. Then no, it's not work. So it really just depends upon, you got to follow the definition of ordinary work. And then Moses further distinguished, the Sabbath in Exodus chapter 34, verse 21. He says, "You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work." Again, the word ordinary work. "But on the seventh day you must stop working, even during the seasons of plowing and harvest." So here again, he's saying ordinary work. However, here's where the next area where especially the Pharisees, got caught up, and that's where they fell short of their understanding of the Sabbath. And in just one chapter over, in Exodus 35, it says, "Then Moses called together the whole community of Israel and told them, 'These are the instructions the Lord has commanded you to follow. You have 6 days each week for ordinary work, but the seventh day must be a Sabbath day of complete rest, a holy day dedicated to the Lord. Anyone who works on that day must be put to death. You may not even light a fire in any of your homes on the Sabbath.'" Seems pretty severe. You got to understand at this point, Moses is kind of tired of dealing with these people. They whine, they complain, everything he does is not good enough. As soon as he does something, 2 weeks later they've forgotten it. So he's just kind of fed up with them. Because if you think about it, it's like, what are you supposed to do? You can't even light a fire, so you're just supposed to sit there in the dark and be hungry. And what's in that? It's like the term is ordinary work. It's like it's work. It's not work to light a fire because you're cold and you want or cook something to eat because you're hungry. It's not work. That's you're just surviving. But that verse of scripture right there is probably where the Pharisees got their ideas of the Sabbath and we got to keep the Sabbath. You can't do this on the Sabbath. You can't do that on the Sabbath. I think they read like 500, 600 rules about what you can or cannot do on the Sabbath. It was insane, so they really took that ball and ran a lot farther with it than God intended. It's like, and this would be the first time in Scripture where man gave their little slant on it, because in one of the Pauline letters, Paul wrote his opinions about like being married and being single, but he did preface in saying but these are my opinions. It's like, so maybe in this verse, maybe Moses is just saying he's kind of tired of dealing with them, so he's like, you know what, you can't even light a fire in your house. I'm tired of you asking me stupid questions. You can't even light a fire, just shut up and leave me alone. Who knows? Maybe that's how it was. Don't know. We'll ask him when we see him. Further in, we're going to go into Leviticus chapter 25, and also the Sabbath isn't just for you and I, it's also for the land. You're supposed to have a Sabbath year every day. It says, "While Moses was on Mount Sinai, the Lord said to him, 'Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. When you have entered the land I am giving you, the land itself must observe a Sabbath rest before the Lord every 7th year. For 6 years you may plant your fields and prune your vineyards and harvest your crops. But during the 7th year, the land must have a Sabbath year of complete rest. It is the Lord's Sabbath. Do not plant your fields or prune your vineyards during that year. And don't store away the crops that grow on their own or gather the grapes from your unpruned vines. The land must have a year of Sabbath, complete rest. But you may eat whatever the land produces on its own during its Sabbath. This applies to you, your male and female servants, your hired workers, and the temporary residents who live with you. Your livestock and the wild animals in your land will also be allowed to eat what the land produces.'" Here God's even just saying, hey, the land needs rest too. And that is actually, I know a little bit about farming, and you got to give the land rest. You can't keep planting and planting and planting, because what's going to happen if you keep planting and planting and planting, the soil's just going to die off. And of course farmers have gotten a little smarter about that. They'll plant one crop here, and then they'll plant another crop there to help replenish same soil, eventually the soil, all the good nutrients, everything in the soil is going to be gone. It's like, so it's, God put it in nature. If you don't obey, my rules, you're not going to eat. It's because, the land's just only going to produce so much. It's like, you don't give it a chance to rest, just like we need rest. And it's like, me personally, I didn't take my rest. It's like, I worked a job for 6 years, rarely took vacation, except for when my kids came down. I had like about a month's worth of vacation time built up, and that was after I'd taken 2 complete weeks to be with my kids. And I didn't honor my Sabbath, so God decided to say, hey, you know what? You're going to honor your Sabbath. And I lost my job, and I was out of work for a month and a half. Praise the Lord, I'll start work again tomorrow. But, I didn't want to honor my Sabbath, and so the Lord forced my hand. He made me honor my Sabbath. It was a difficult time at first. It's like, but it was a good time. I don't necessarily want to go through that again, so I'll make sure to take my time off as I can. But I've learned my lesson. I was like, you take your time off for your Sabbath, and your Sabbath doesn't have to be Sunday. I was like, originally the Sabbath was Saturday. As Christians, we decided to do it on Sunday to differentiate ourselves between us and the Jews, because Christians wanted to make sure there was a definitive difference between worshiping in a Judaic Levitical law versus the Christian environment. And so we decided to do it on Sunday. And of course, as Americans, we decided to have Saturday and Sunday as 2 days off. Whereas we have a 5-day work week instead of a 6-day work week, which they have. So that's kind of nice to have 2 days off, isn't it? It's fine, right? Exactly. Because you have your day of rest, and you have God's day of rest. So it's kind of nice. A day for you, a day for God. But if you don't honor that, it's going to be forced upon you. A really good book I read was a doctrine, and it really hit me right between the eyes. It says like, if you don't honor the Sabbath, as like God will inflict the Sabbath upon you, whether by illness, loss of job, or whatever. And I was like, did you ever read something? It's like you're maybe reading the Bible, or reading some godly book, and it's like, or maybe not even have to be a godly book. You can just be reading the news, and something happens, and something just hits you like right between the eyes. Like, oh, that's me. It's like, yeah. And it's like, God really showed me that what I was doing wasn't right. So I vowed I'm not going to do that again. Because not only did I not honor my Sabbath, I dishonored the second commandment. I was like, work was my idol. I was like, I worked. I was like, you can ask the people, people that were normal goers can testify. It's like, I was here maybe once a month. If that was a good month. Sometimes it would be like 2 months before I was ever able to come to church because of my work. And work became my idol. It became my all in all, and that's not the way God intends us to be. And then, of course, God even tells them in further on Leviticus chapter 26. Just going to read verse 27. If in spite of all this you still refuse to listen and still remain hostile toward me, then I will give my full vent to my hostility. I will myself punish you 7 times over for your sins. Then you will eat the flesh of your own sons and daughters. I will destroy your pagan shrines and knock down your places of worship. I will leave your lifeless corpses piled on top of your lifeless idols. I will despise you. I said, I don't know, at this point I have to look. I said, whatever I got to do to avoid that, I'm going to do to avoid that. I said, but unfortunately they didn't. I will make your cities desolate and destroy your place of pagan worship. I will take no pleasure in your offerings that should be a pleasing aroma to me. Yes, I myself will devastate your land. Your enemies who come to occupy it will be appalled at what they see. I will scatter you among the nations and bring out my sword against you. Your land will become desolate and your cities will lie in ruins. Then at last the land will enjoy its neglected Sabbath years as it lies desolate while you are in exile in the land of your enemies. Then the land will finally rest and enjoy the Sabbaths it missed. As long as the land lies in ruins, it will enjoy the rest you never allowed it to take every 7th year while you live in it. Ouch is right. So God here is taking a very hard stance about honoring the Sabbath. The Sabbath is, rest, and let's face it, how many people work a lot? Like work those jobs, like we're working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. Corey right here has done that. And it's like, what happened? You ran yourself into the ground. That's like your body starts falling apart. Your your home life starts falling apart, your emotional life starts falling apart. Why? I say, because your body has to have rest. I say, you can't just keep, you're not the Energizer Bunny. You can't just keep going and going and going. You have to stop and, take a day of rest. I say, and, if you can't be here on Sundays, be here on Wednesdays. If you can't be here on Sundays or Wednesdays, do something to get plugged in and get with somebody else, because, man is not meant to be alone. That's, one of the first, lessons in the Bible is like, man, it's not good for man to be alone. Because when you get alone, that's when Satan starts, pecking away at you and saying, oh, hey, you can do this, it's okay. Like, yeah, you're right, I can. It's like, I shouldn't, but I can do it. And so, left our own devices, we'll do some pretty bad stuff, unfortunately. And that's why it's not good for us to be alone. So if you can't be here on a Sunday, you can't be on a Wednesday, do what you can. Get in the Bible study. Get in your word every day. It's like, you've got to have your rest. That's like, if unfortunately, things happen as you can't be, on a Sunday or you can't be on a Wednesday, you got to do something. Get in fellowship with, fellow believer. If it's just least two of you, it's least two of you. It's like, what does the Lord Scripture say? It's like, if, two or more are gathered, there I am. It's like, so you at least get one other person with you while you're on your day off. You're doing good. It's like, and you met the, of course, that doesn't mean you do sinful things when you're, with your friend. It's like, because then that's not really being in fellowship with the Lord either. So that's what the Old Testament says about the Sabbath. It's like we're going to go down to the New Testament. First, we're going to go into the book of Mark, chapter 2, verses. We're going to start off in verse 23. Give me a moment to get there.
Wait, what was it?
Mark chapter 2, it was right after Matthew, and verse 23. Got it? All right. Here's some pages rustling, so I'll give it a minute. Mark chapter 2. Yeah, no, Mark chapter 2, verse 23. Okay, so one Sabbath day, as Jesus was walking through some grain fields, his disciples began breaking off heads of grain to eat. But the Pharisees said to Jesus, look, why are they breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath? They're just walking through the grain field, picking up, that'd be like walking through a grape, through grapevine, grabbing a grape and popping in your mouth, and they're getting upset about it. Like, oh, you're working on the Sabbath. Like, picking up grape for my own personal use harvest, implies you're massively doing something that you're doing it a lot. I think they're just doing it for their own personal use. I don't think on the Sabbath doesn't imply a day of fasting. So it doesn't say you must fast on the Sabbath. It just says you must rest on the Sabbath. It didn't say you had to starve yourself, did it? No. We can go back and look at it again, but it doesn't say anything about starving. It says Jesus said to them, verses 25. Jesus said to them, haven't you even read in the scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? Now understand this is an insult, right, to the Pharisees. The Pharisees, they were the religious leaders. They had access to scrolls. They knew the Old Testament backwards, forwards, and upside down. So that in itself is an insult. It's like, haven't you read? It's like, because these were the teachers. They knew. He went into the house of God during the days when Abiathar was high priest, and broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests are allowed to eat. He also gave some to his companions. Here's the coup de grace. Then Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord, even over the Sabbath. This right here is telling you, it's like, if you're hungry, eat something. Because the Sabbath isn't meant to make you miserable. As like if you're just sitting in your dark house, it's cold, you're hungry. That's like, I really think about God. Like, no, you're thinking about man, I'm cold, I'm hungry. I was like, can't wait for this day to be over so I can eat. So we're going to continue on in Mark. Jesus again does some, I think Jesus liked to do a lot of things on the Sabbath just because you have those people. It's like I'm one of them. Honestly, it's like if I notice there's something that irritates you a little bit, I'm probably going to do it. Honestly, not meant to get you mad or anything, but just it's like we like to pick a little bit. And Jesus Jesus liked to pick at those Pharisees a little bit because, well, that was Jesus. He was a jokester. He liked it. It's funny. Exactly. So in Mark 3, verse 1, Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was a Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he had healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Now here again, working on the Sabbath. The Bible says ordinary work. Well, healing someone with a deformed hand that's not really ordinary for one. It's like that's pretty extraordinary. And work implies they got paid for it. Jesus didn't get paid for this, and it's like it's something he enjoyed. So there again, it didn't meet the qualifications of ordinary work. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, "Come and stand in front of everyone." Then he turned to his critics and asked, "Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save life or to destroy it?" But they wouldn't answer him. Why? Because it's really, you have one of those questions like you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. It's like Jesus one time did it to him before, well not before, but later on, we asked him, say, was John's baptism from God or from man? It's like no matter which way they answered it, they were, it was the wrong answer. So they just said nothing. He looked around, and then verse 5. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. Then he said to the man, "Hold out your hand." So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. At once the Pharisees went away and met with the supporters of Herod to plot how to kill Jesus. Wow, you heal somebody's deformed hand, and they want to kill you. Yeah. That's really kind of says it all right there. But that's where the Pharisees' hearts were. Their hearts weren't on things of God, they were on themselves. And unfortunately, their misunderstanding of what the scriptures say. But God used it for His glory because if they didn't do what was prophesied and turned their back on Jesus and make it where He was going to be crucified, then we wouldn't be sitting here today with the hopes of living in eternal life with Jesus. Because without that, we would all be going down and not up. So praise the Lord for that. Unfortunately, he had to die a horrible, horrible death. It's like, but it was for our benefit. And again, Jesus likes to do stuff on the Sabbath. So in John chapter 5, starting off verse 1. Jesus liked to pick. He's a jokester and like. Afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city, near the sheep gate, was a pool of Bethesda, that's right, with 5 covered porches. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" "I can't, sir," the sick man said, "for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me." I kind of, when I read this, it's like thinking, that's kind of gross. Think like there's all these sick people that have got all the diseases, they're just bathing in this pool, and they just stir up the water and all jump in the pool. So, but that's oh, hey, these are healing waters. They didn't believe in God to heal. They say, oh, these are healing waters. I got to jump in this water, I'm going to be healed. Really? So their faith was misplaced. But Jesus, of course, had a better answer for them. It says, Jesus told him, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk." Instantly the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath. And that wasn't done by accident. Jesus did it on purpose because he continued. That's one of the commonalities in the opening 4 Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Jesus did a lot of things on the Sabbath. To really get at the Pharisees because that he was trying to hammer the point home that's like you can do good on the Sabbath. And I was like, the Pharisees didn't believe in doing anything on the Sabbath. so in verse 10, so the Jewish leaders objected. They said to the man who was cured, you can't work on the Sabbath. The law doesn't allow you to carry that sleeping mat.
Oh my
Really? It's a mat. That's like, but they considered it work. They considered that a violation of the Sabbath because this man was carrying around a sleeping mat. I don't know about you, it's like, but I don't really consider sleeping mat, and again, ordinary work. It's not really work to pick up a sleeping mat and take it home. It's like, what am I supposed to leave it there and come back on Monday and get it? Like, no, you just pick it up and you take it with you. So they, the Pharisees, confronted the man, and he said, Jesus told me to do it. And so then in verse 16 it says, so the Jewish leaders began harassing Jesus for breaking the Sabbath rules. But Jesus replied, my Father is always working, and so am I. Well, that really, chapter butt, burger biscuits, whatever you want to call it, is that really got in the Pharisees' face, because now, not only is this blasphemer, ungodly man, and just doing all these things he's doing on the Sabbath, but now he has dared to call himself, the Son of God. Aren't we all technically sons of God? It's like, because, Jesus, God is our Father, so if they're our Father, then that means that we're the Son, right? Okay, but for them, that was a big deal. I mean, it was bigger than doing the Sabbath, so they're really, at that point, trying to find a way to kill Jesus. Of course, Jesus didn't stop doing what he was doing on the Sabbath, because Jesus didn't believe in doing that. So in John chapter 7, verses 21 to 23, Jesus replied, I did one miracle on the Sabbath, and you were amazed. But you work on the Sabbath too, when you obey Moses' law of circumcision. Actually, this tradition of circumcision began with the patriarchs, long before the law of Moses. For if the correct time for circumcising your son falls on the Sabbath, you go ahead and do it so as not to break the law of Moses. So why should you be angry with me for healing a man on the Sabbath? Look beneath the surface so you can judge correctly. Here Jesus is getting in their face. Because the law of circumcision, in case you don't know, was basically if you had a boy, you had to circumcise him, 6 days? 8 days later. It was 8 days later you had to circumcise your baby boy. That was the law of Moses. It wasn't all in the Ten Commandments, but it was one of his many laws in Leviticus. And if you want to go through that, you go ahead. There's rules for everything in Leviticus, and I mean everything in Leviticus. But God said, okay, 8 days later you got to circumcise them. Well, 8 days later fell on the Sabbath. Well, they were still going to, sniff a tip. And, that, of course, meant, the priest had to do it. And, you okay, Shannon? And so, Jesus is telling me, wait a minute. So, we're saying it's okay to circumcise somebody on the Sabbath, but this guy picks up this sleeping mat, and you're yelling at him, or my disciples are hungry, so they take a piece of grain and and take off the husk, and so they can eat it, and you yell at them for working on the Sabbath, but performing a medical procedure, where you do that is not work, because Moses' law is more important than one of the Ten Commandments, and so Jesus is trying to get them to change their way of thinking and realize hey, wait a minute, you know what, you're right, yeah. And actually, I got that I didn't have that originally, but I got it from our study, when I was reading. Oh, yeah, that's good. So, hey, it's good. It was meant for me to start in John, so I could add to my message today. So, yeah. So, and then Jesus, of course, again, busy guy on the Sabbath. I'm sure he did stuff during the week, but I think the Sabbath was his favorite day to do stuff, just because, it got in people's faces and had to make people wake up. God, doesn't like the same old, and we shouldn't either. It's you got to shake things up. So he was trying to shake people up out of their, just sitting there reading the scripture, reading the scrolls of Moses, and pretending that they were doing, holy, and he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, "Go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam." Siloam means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, "Isn't this the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said he was, and others said, "No, he just looks like him." But the beggar kept saying, "Yes, I am the same one." They asked, "Who healed you? What happened?" He told them, "The man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, 'Go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself.' So I went and washed, and now I can see." "Where is he now?" they asked. "I don't know," he replied. Verse 13. Then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees, because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud and healed him. The Pharisees asked the man all about it, so he told them, "He put the mud over my eyes, and then I washed it. And when I washed it away, I could see." Of course, probably the Pharisees were upset that he made mud. I mean, that was probably one of their 500 rules, 600 rules, and literally it says that in somewhere in the Bible, well, not in the Bible itself, but one of the descriptive things. They literally had roughly around 500-600 things you could not do on the Sabbath. I mean, that's just amazing. It's like, imagine making mud and washing it off your face. It's probably, you're just supposed to leave the mud on your face until the next day, because it's too much work to clean, be clean. So, some of the Pharisees said, "This man Jesus is not from God, for he is working on the Sabbath." Others said, "But how could an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs?" So there was deep division of opinion among them. See here, it's showing that, everything's not hunky-dory in the Pharisees' camp, because some of them are finally starting to see that, the forest for the trees is like, wait a minute, it's like, if he's working on Sabbath, it's like, but he's doing all these wonderful things, how can we really, say, like, oh, he's not of God? It's like, because, then how am I supposed to believe these blind people are seeing, these lame are walking, and I don't think at this point he's raising one from the dead, but still, blind walking and blind seeing and the lame walking, that's pretty impressive. No one else had done that, so at that point, so it's like when the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, "What's your opinion about this man who healed you?" The man replied, "I think he must be a prophet." The Jewish leaders still refused to believe the man had been blind and could now see, and they called in his parents. They asked him, "Is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he now see?" So at this point, they're like, okay, this is just a sham. So this guy wasn't really blind. It's like he was just pretending to be blind. So Jesus is, making himself look good, like one of those charlatans. Like, like they have the people in the wheelchairs. They're not really in the wheelchairs. They look like, "Oh, look, I healed him. He's healed." That's what the Pharisees are trying. They're trying to discount Jesus' miracle because they don't want people to believe in him, because they believe in him, then they're not believing in them, and they don't have as much prestige and money and all the other bells and whistles that go with it. His parents replied, "We know this is our son and that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He is old enough to speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders, who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, "He is old enough, ask him." The problem here is being expelled from the synagogue. It's like, that's so against, what God would want you to do, to expel somebody, like, "Oh, you believe, you don't believe what I believe, so I'm going to kick you out." Kick you out. It's like, what about love? It's you're supposed to try to help people, not like kicking them out. It's not helping them. But unfortunately, churches, they do that. Like Catholics call it excommunication. They can just kick you completely out of the church. It's like Scientologists. If you break away from Scientology, Church of Scientology, your family is no longer allowed. Your own family is no longer allowed to talk to you anymore, or they'll be kicked out of church as well. That's how serious. So that's how much power, unfortunately, is given to churches, and that's just too much power for any one person to have. But that's a message for another time. So for the second time, they called in the man who had been blind and told him, "God should get the glory for this, because we know this man Jesus is a sinner." Verse 25, "I don't know whether he is a sinner," the man replied, "but I know this, I was blind and now I can see." But what did he do, they asked. How did he heal you? You ever have somebody ask you a question, you already answered it, and it's like they just keep asking the same question over and over and over again because they don't like the answer you're giving them? Look, the man exclaimed, I told you once. Did you listen? Why? Do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Oh, well, he really kicked a hornet's nest there, didn't he? Then they cursed him and said, these are religious leaders, and they just cursed him. It's not something your religious leaders should be doing, is, speaking curses. He goes, you are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know God spoke to Moses, but we don't even know where this man comes from. And I like this guy. This guy's a little bit of a smart tail like myself. So he goes, why, that's very strange, the man replied. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from. We all know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. It's like here you have a blind man, who's now able to see. He can see things a lot more clearer than the Pharisees have all this learning. And understand the Pharisees, they were like the educated. They were the educated. They could read, they could write. It's like most people back then, it's like, if they weren't, they were the lower levels of society, they couldn't read or write. And him being blind, guarantee you he didn't know how to read or write. He was born blind. It's like I doubt they made, Braille back then. It's like, so, realistically, he couldn't read or write, and so, he only had word of mouth. I was like, yeah, but he could see things that they couldn't see. He said, this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. Exactly. It's like, people that are not, things that are, not of God can't do good things. You were born a total sinner, they answered. Are you trying to teach us? And they threw him out of the synagogue. It's like, so, that's a lesson of the Sabbath. And what I want you guys to take from that is that the Sabbath isn't about a bunch of rules. It isn't about, sitting, and you have to be in church for 8 hours and, do nothing all day. It's like, no, it's a time for fellowship. It's a time for, fun. It's like, you can go to church on Sundays, and then afterwards you can go out to dinner or not, or, do whatever. It's like you just do what you do for the Lord. If you can do good on the Sabbath, you do good on the Sabbath. That's like if, your neighbor, your neighbor's got a broken foot. You see their yard needs to be mowed. Well, if it's Sunday, it's like, so what? You go mow the yard for them because you know that they can't get out and do it. Does that mean you work? No. It's like because you're doing something nice. You're doing something good. So you do good on the Sabbath. The Lord, it's like Jesus said himself. It's like the Sabbath wasn't made to meet, people aren't made to meet the needs of the Sabbath. The Sabbath was to meet the needs of the people. People need to do rest. It's like, but you also need to do good. That's the message I have for you guys. I hope you receive it well. Hope I didn't get in the way of the message. If I did, I'm sorry. I hope you learned something from it. And you don't have to go through the imposed Sabbath that I had to go through, because it's good times. It's like, but it wasn't. It took me a couple weeks to realize what was going on. I thought it was like, what was me? It's like it took me a couple weeks to realize, like, yeah, okay, all right, I earned this, so I'm just gonna stick, grin and bear it, and my life is the better for it. It's like my quality of life is vastly improved since got out of the situation. It's like money isn't everything, because it isn't even the only thing. It's like if you work at a job, it's like you don't make, say you work at a job and make $10 an hour. It's like, but you can go over here, you can get a job, and you can make like $16 an hour. It's like, but you're gonna be miserable doing that job. Whereas you work for $10 an hour, you can be happy. It's like you better stay at the job you can do for $10 an hour, and be happy. It's, you know what? It's like you can't take it with you.
It's true.
You can't take it with you. So observe your Sabbath. It's like take your time. When you have time off, enjoy your time off. It's like you take your days of rest. It's like enjoy, be with your family, be with your friends. It's like and just love each other and be there for each other. And it's like don't shy away from doing good works on the Sabbath. Just don't do that works. All right,